we'll go ahead and start, and if others join us, that's fine. Welcome. I am so excited to have these three fantastic alumni here with us today, and I am so incredibly grateful that they pivoted with us when we had a snow day last Monday when they were supposed to be with us. And I'm excited to have the 5 students here. I've missed you. It seems like a long time when we go 2 weeks without seeing each other when it's a once-a-week class. So what I am going to do is I am going to, before I introduce our alumni, I'm wondering if each of the students can just pop in for a second. If you can't turn on your camera, that's fine. But if you can, just so our alumni know kind of who they're talking to, just go ahead and introduce yourself and let them know kind of how you came to Com Studies and what you're excited to learn from them. I'm just going to call on you because I know we're all in different orders, but Sophie, do you want to kick us off?
Yeah, I'm Sophie, and I decided to go into comm studies because I really like music and fashion, and I wanted to go into like PR type of stuff. And I also maybe wanted to go to law school after to work on contract law and like music management, but we'll see what happens.
Excellent. Thanks, Sophie. Dylan?
Yeah, I went into comp studies because I wanted to get sort of like a overall business understanding, and hopefully I'm looking to turn that into sort of like a online like marketing type of deal.
Awesome. Thanks, Dylan. Lauren?
Hi, I'm Lauren. I went into communication studies probably because I'm really interested in PR and marketing stuff too. So I just kind of wanted to like learn more about what my options were as far as a career goes. So yeah.
Awesome. Thanks, Lauren. Liam? Liam, are you trying to talk? We can't hear you. Looks like you're muted, Liam. Oh, mic is broke. All right. That's okay. Awesome. Do you want to let us know why Com Studies? You can type there. I'll let Kaylee go, and then I can come back and read what you type, Liam. Kaylee?
Hi, so I chose communications because kind of same thing. I was interested in like PR stuff and marketing, advertising, so I wanted to study that and see like what my options were as far as like a job in the future.
Awesome. Wonderful, wonderful, wonderful. All right. Oh, and we have Caitlin popping in. Hi, Caitlin. We are just introducing ourselves to the alum. Do you want to jump in and introduce yourself and let the alum know kind of how you got to Com Studies? Maybe. Okay. I don't think Caitlin is quite here yet, but I want to, oh, hi, Caitlin. We're just all introducing ourselves to the alum. So if you want to pop in and introduce yourself and let them know what you are in Com Studies hoping to do.
Hi, yeah, I'm Caitlin McNeil, and I'm in comp studies because I really want to go into like marketing, advertising, or like PR. And yeah.
Awesome. Thank you. And then Liam typed in the chat that he hopes to go into music and specifically management working with people. So that's kind of where we're coming to Com Studies with. I asked each alum to kind of tell us their own story because they can do a much better job than me reading their bio. So I'm going to start with Kaylee McMonigal. Kaylee, go ahead.
Great. Thanks for having me. My name is Kaylee, and I graduated back in 2011 from the undergraduate program, and then later did my master's as well from CSU's Comm Studies program. I actually started off thinking that I wanted to go into radio journalism, and I wasn't quite dedicated to it enough in the sense that I knew it was for sure for me, that I wanted to to go into a journalism major. So I ended up opting for comm studies. And then the other thing that kind of led me down that path was I had looked at the degree programs that people that I really admired had gone through. And in this case, I looked at Ira Glass, who hosted This American Life, or does host This American Life. And he got a degree in something called semiotics from Brown University. And it's not super common that you have a degree in semiotics, which if you haven't already taken public speaking, they start to talk about some of semiotics in there. But basically, it's just how we attach meaning to words and make meaning out of those things. And so the next step was, okay, communication studies has pieces of that. So I went into comm studies. During my years at CSU, I worked at KCSU in their news department, and then I also worked at a community radio station, KRFC, as well as I was in a service learning course as my public speaking course. And service learning just means that you do a certain amount of a sort of applied volunteer work that allows you to use what you're doing in the class in a real world setting. So I chose to do that with KRFC so that I could do some public speaking in that environment and learn more about radio. I ended up working for a little NPR station in North Carolina outside of school. And it was there, even though I had done a number of experiences with radio before that, I realized that it wasn't actually for me. Partly because while I love communication studies, I'm much more of an introvert, and it was a really extroverted thing. But it just so happened that while I was in undergrad, I became a part of the Center for Public Deliberation, where I was a student associate there. And the Center for Public Deliberation teaches students to be facilitators and then gives you real world experience by having you go and facilitate for community meetings that are happening throughout Fort Collins and really northern Colorado. So, you know, the city might ask for some help thinking about how to have conversations with community members about an upcoming fire ban or something like that, right? And as students, you can be there to help facilitate those conversations. So I realized that I was a much better facilitator than I was an interviewer, and kind of switched directions at that point. I went and got my master's at CSU in comm studies with a specialization in deliberative studies. Deliberation really just meaning anytime folks are coming together to make decisions and want to make good decisions, and especially ones that will affect the public. Things like fires, or how we have transportation systems, or what our water use is like, and things like that. But it could also be social issues as well, right? And so now I work as a collaboration manager for a place called the Civic Canopy. And our mission is to create the capacity for the many to work as one for the good of all. And I say our vision because it's really pretty broad. We work across the state, and we work with cities, government, education, and individual community members to achieve the change that they want to see in their community. And we do that through facilitation and support in different ways. So I can talk a little bit more about that as we go on, but that's kind of brief overview. And I do have also some experience in marketing because I've worked for a number of nonprofits. So it's been another role that I've stepped into as a communication major in each of those roles. So I can speak to that a little bit too.
Wonderful. Thank you, Kaylee. Bailey, Gregor, how about you take it off now? Or take it away.
Hi, everyone. I'm Bailey Gregor. It's nice to be here virtually with all of you. So just a little bit about me and kind of how I fell into where I'm currently at. I graduated from CSU in winter of 2014 with a comm studies degree. And really how I fell into that degree is there were so many different options. So I truly didn't know exactly what I wanted to do in my career path, but communication studies offered so many different kind of career paths that you could stem off from that. And then through some of the classes I took, one with Elizabeth here, I really found that I had a passion for employees, and really kind of understanding the behind the scenes of companies and organizations and what makes them function so well, hopefully, or not. So I took that. I started my career with Vail Resorts in HR at a front desk type position. What I really enjoyed about working for Vail Resorts was the kind of wide range of different departments. So we had, of course, ski school, ticket sales, mountain dining. I really got to work with all different types of industries in one company. So I was there for about 5 years, and moved up to a generalist position in HR and did a lot of employee relations issues. And that's primarily what I focused on kind of in my last year there. And then for the past year, I've worked for the city of Grand Junction as an HR analyst. So in this role, it's been very interesting to move into the public sector. And I truly enjoyed still having a wide range of business partners, but kind of more on the professional side. So working with year-round employees, from fire, police, and then we have an environmental lab, so all sorts of different employees. And primarily in this role, I've done a lot of recruiting. So that's what I spend a lot of my time on, although there is, of course, a wide array of things that we do here. And it's interesting, I know a lot of you mentioned marketing. So I don't have as much experience in that area, but kind of how can we get employees and how can we recruit them from all different backgrounds to come here and work here in Grand Junction. So that's a little bit about me.
Thank you, Bailey. Hannah.
Hello, everyone. Thanks for having me today. So my name's Hannah. I use she, her, hers pronouns. So I'm a first-gen college graduate, and I lived in Colorado Springs for most of my life, and I had an AP English teacher talk about her daughter who went to ASU that was a comm major, and I was like, okay, that sounds interesting. So I just decided to major in it on a whim because I didn't really know what I wanted to do. And then I came to like an admitted student day, and my mom was like, yeah, this major's for you. Then I took pop culture, and I was like, what is this major? I'm so confused. Like, I didn't know what to expect. I was like, is this all media? Like, I don't know if I'm interested in that. But I had a really great academic advisor, honestly, who like helped me be successful. So I started out as an in-state student, and then my parents moved to Hawaii because my mom's in the Army. And I was like, maybe I should transfer. My advisor was like, well, you've really found like a community here. Like, I think you should get more involved. And so I did. So I applied to be a RAM welcome leader, and I got rejected. And I was like, dang, this is hard to get involved. And then I was like, whatever, I guess I'll just focus on school and try to find a minor because, we needed a minor in comm studies. And so I was like, well, I seem to like history. I'm going to add that as a minor. And then as I went through it, I ended up eventually becoming a RAM welcome leader, ironically. So if you get rejected, it's just part of college. Let me just say that. And then I ended up being an orientation leader from that. So if you obviously went to orientation this summer, so I was one of those people. And then from there, my advisor was like, well, have you considered grad school? And I had a really good professor in one of my sociology classes that just talked to and like really opened my eyes to like the issues women face with degrees. And she really like talked about how getting her master's really changed her life and helped her. And so I was like, I'm going to get a master's degree, and I don't know what it's going to be in. So fast forward to my senior year, and my academic advisor is like, well, like, are you going to go into student affairs? And so I never even knew this was a job, right? So if you think about all the like people you've possibly interacted with virtually or like hope to interact with, like fraternity sorority life, like the people that are in charge of your residence halls, your academic advisor, all those different people work in a part of student affairs. And so I was like, okay, I'm going to do this. And so I was like, I'll apply to 2 in-state schools and I'll apply to 2 out-of-state schools. Well, I had an intern when I was an orientation leader, and she went to Western Illinois University for her master's. So I decided to apply there in a whim. I don't know if any of you are from Illinois, but it's in rural Illinois, and it's like a small like a medium public. And it was nothing like CSU. I was just like complete culture shock, but I ended up going there because I felt really welcomed, and they were going to pay for my tuition, honestly. And I got a graduate assistantship. And so when I was in grad school, I worked in admissions, and so I did a lot of recruiting, group visits. I worked with students. So if you can remember, like when you're looking for a college, those people that are like, you should apply to CSU. Like I was one of those people. And I didn't mention, but I graduated in 2017, so not too long ago. And then I took an internship in between my first year and my second year, and I went to the University of Alabama. And I worked in orientation. So I got a different feel for it, and I was like, okay. And then my last year of grad school came, and I was like, well, I need to get out of Illinois. I can't handle Midwestern cold. Like, this is not like Colorado. I'm too cold. What's a polar vortex? And it was hard because I've moved around my whole life, and the job search can be very daunting. But then somehow I ended up applying to the University of Arizona for a job that's coordinator for communications and outreach. And I was like, this doesn't seem like any other student affairs job I've done before, but it says communication, and that's what my bachelor's degree is in. And I felt like I had a lot of transferable skills, and I knew I did, right? Like I got my master's, I specialized in college student personnel. And so I was like, I can do this. Like I have the transferable skills, social media. I've worked with college students. Like I have a passion for helping students. And so that's how I ended up into it. And you probably maybe not ever met someone that has the job I do, because they have a very unique program, and it's called the SOS program. So if you think about a time in college when you've had a question and you're like, I have no idea who to ask, like who do I ask how to load money onto my meal plan? Or I am having a crisis and I don't even know if I tell my professor, do I tell my best friend? So people come to SOS. We have a chat platform, a text, and phone and email. And then when we're in person, because I'm remote right now, we also have a walk-up window. And so people can message us anonymously, or they can message us, with their student ID and stuff, and we help navigate their questions. So if they are like, I just need to unload, I need to know how to get to my residence hall, I need to know how to do laundry, I need to know how to schedule an appointment with my advisor, and then we answer those questions. So because studies show that when students have a central place to go, they're more likely to be retained at a university. So that's like a really exciting part, right? To know that I get to help and use my communication skills that I learned in undergrad. And I never thought like my undergrad degree would be more applicable than my like master's degree, but it really has been just the like foundation I learned in it. And then I also do a lot of work on sense of belonging and growth mindset. And so the whole thing, when I said like, it's okay if you fail or you get rejected, like you can still be good, is a big part of growth mindset. And sense of belonging, just making sure like students know that they belong at this institution, that they have the ability to succeed and thrive where they're at. And I do with like general communications just in the department. I work in student success and retention innovation, so it's very like strengths based. And this might all sound very confusing, so I'm sorry if it is, because I didn't really understand what the job would fully be like till I'm here. And even I was in a cohort of 29 people, and I'm the only person that has like this like in between academic and student affairs job. But yeah, I moved to Tucson, Arizona. I'd never been to Arizona, but I thought it sounded like a good idea, and there's going to be sunshine, because I think we take for granted when you live in Colorado, like how sunny it is. And then you move somewhere where it's not quite as sunny, and you're like, people go 3 months without ever seeing the sun. And it's so weird, just the realizations you have like post grad, and you realize like where you're meant to be. And I'm really happy to be in Arizona. I don't miss the Colorado snow, but I have mountains here, just like Tucson, and Fort Collins does too. But if you have any questions, just let me know. Happy to be here.
Thank you all. Hannah, I have to laugh. I grew up in Michigan, so I am well aware of what it's like to go without seeing the sun for months on end. All right, you all. So we have, as you can tell from their introductions and their stories, we have three really dynamic alums here who are doing really cool things. So I would love to open it up for student questions now.
I have a quick question.
Good. Thank you, Sophie.
So if you guys can go back into college, what was one of your favorite communication studies classes that you took?
One of my favorite classes I took was professional communication. I'm not sure if it's offered, but I took it my senior year, and that was the most applicable class I ever took. Sorry if you can hear my dog, she's drinking water. It was the most applicable class. Like they teach you how to interview, they help you do your resume, they help you do like literally your LinkedIn, like life changing. I continue to use that advice I learned. It was just so applicable. And I wish I would have told myself to go to the Career Development Center sooner in college, but like that one made me feel so prepared. Like I was a person at my interview days for grad school. People were like, what kind of questions do you have? Because they literally helped me draft like all the questions I needed for interview days. And it's not necessarily like this a super like class you would think like, oh, that's calm, but like professional communication is so important for like what's after college. And I would definitely recommend taking that. You don't have to take it now, you can take it later, but it's definitely a great class.
That's SPCM 333. And yes, we do offer a few sections of that every semester. So Bailey, I saw that you had unmuted your mic there.
Yeah, so I was going to say, I mean, one of my favorite classes was organizational communication with you. And truly for me, it was so interesting because it really sparked what I wanted to do with my career, and why or why not organizations are successful and where that really stems from. So for me, that was probably one of my most favorites, and kind of led me to kind of follow the HR career path. So.
And that's SPCM 433. Kaylee, how about you? Do you remember any classes that really stand out?
Yeah, one that really stuck out for me was Rhetoric of Social Movement. And it's a class that I think if you're interested in those types of things, like it's just fun for those reasons. But I think that it's one of those classes that's shaped the way that I think about myself as a citizen and a member of my community, in addition to the things that I might want as a professional as well. And I mean, we're seeing it happen right now in this year. I feel like it's one of those things that now that I have some of that language, every time I'm watching the news or something like that, my partner will be like, so what do you think's going on here? What are the messages that they're using? How are they being like effective or ineffective right now? And we'll talk about that. And I don't think that that's necessarily going to be going away anytime soon. So that one's just a fun one that opened my eyes in different ways to things that I had never really heard about or encountered.
Excellent. I don't know the number of that one off the top of my head, but it's a 400 level class. So excellent. Other questions? Liam has a question. Do you think getting an internship is something you would recommend to help develop skills working with others?
So really quick, I want to kind of take this. I wasn't able to do an internship in college and I worked the whole time. So from that perspective, I think it's something that I wish I would have been able to do. However, I did take the experiences that I had, working while in school. I think that gives you a lot of really beneficial experiences, to use that towards my resume. So it's something that I wish I could have done and didn't really have the opportunity to do it, but I used, the experiences that I did have, to benefit me down the road.
Bailey, can you talk a little bit about what type of jobs you had during college and how you then framed that when you were thinking about how does this fit into what I'd like to do longer term?
Yeah, absolutely. So I worked at Morgan Library for a couple of years. So I had an on-campus job, and that was great, really just kind of getting to know so many different types of people, interacting with so many different students, on a professional level. And then I also worked at Whole Foods for, I think, 2 to 3 years, and really getting to know that culture, and again interacting with all different types of people, on a daily basis, being able to show that, you can do well under stress, and communicate clearly and effectively with different types of people. So really tying, I think that, the people skills and the ability to communicate effectively was really beneficial for me when, applying for an HR position where I, again, was in front of people all day.
I also couldn't take an internship, like a formalized one, because I needed to work. And I worked at Lake Street Market and I worked at Rocket Fizz downtown. And my advisor knew that it like just wasn't financially feasible for me to do like something like that. And so we actually worked with one of my supervisors in orientation to just like turn it into so I could take the internship. Like independent study class they had. And so I just got to like turn one of my on-campus experiences into that, which was really helpful, right? Because what I was doing in OTP was like very applicable to what I wanted to do in grad school. And so that was great because I was like able to still make money and do it. And I know there's lots of paid opportunities, but like I couldn't take a whole summer off essentially for an internship because I knew I needed like a paying job. I obviously had an internship when I went to grad school, but it was paid the whole time. Like they even paid for my housing, which like that was also important, right? I was like, I can't take the whole summer off and not have a job. I think the summer I had at Alabama as my internship was really helpful. But when I went through like a national search for it. They have a program called NODA. And so I went through like a formalized one. You don't necessarily get automatically placed, but you have to interview for them. And even just going through the process, I think of interviewing for internships is very helpful for when you do decide to apply for a career or to grad school after college, because it's really different than like getting an on-campus job and those things. And it's still like helpful later on in your life. Even if you don't land that internship, right, or you get rejected and stuff, like it's great interview experience just to prepare yourself.
I think that goes back to that growth mindset you were talking about, right? Like just getting the experience doing that, and it kind of demystifies what's it like to go on an interview, and it helps you develop your voice a little bit. So yeah, thanks, Hannah.
Yeah, I think I did have the opportunity to do an internship, though I didn't necessarily do one for credit. I had an internship with a music and arts organization in Fort Collins called Beat Street. And so I worked in that role as like a volunteer liaison. Um, and I think that was helpful to me. I think that whether or not it's an internship, I think the question really is where are there opportunities for you to explore what you're interested in, gain some kind of hands-on tools, and and really just explore that. So like Hannah, you were talking about RAM Welcome. That's almost more connected to student affairs than maybe an internship at that time would have been, that gave you that experience. I think that there's some of it, like because I knew I wanted to do journalism, communication was going to give me a broad skill set as a base, but I needed to focus more specifically on some of those key, like just audio editing tools that I wasn't going to get necessarily in a class. That way, when I did apply to that first job, I had audio samples that I could use, right? So if there's a specific kind of niche that you want to go into, say it is, if you are somebody who wants to do marketing or PR work, having an internship maybe where you do get to create a portfolio of some social media samples or something like that can be helpful depending on the range of classes you're taking too. Because you might get some of those pieces that you get some things that you can show to a future employer, okay, here's what I can do, but you might want some of those experiences otherwise. And I think half of internships also is just getting into sort of like what are the professional norms. How are you supposed to answer emails, schedule? I mean, 30% of my job is scheduling appointments, I feel like. So just getting some of those like skills that you're comfortable with, and you can go into a job interview saying like, yes, I can enter this professional environment.
I think that's a great point, right? Is that ability to build skills in an internship and connect them to those concepts that you're learning in class is so valuable. And students, we will be having a presentation from our internship coordinator in the next couple of weeks. So we will start to touch on those a little bit. Other questions? I have one, and I hope that the students will think of a few why I'm asking this. Can you talk a little bit? A lot of you talked about kind of either not knowing exactly what you wanted to do or changing paths. Can you talk a little bit about how you've seen this major to be transferable, right? And kind of Bailey, I think you talked about the wide variety of things that you can do with it. Can you talk a little bit about how you have either found that to be true or not true as you've entered the workforce?
Yeah, so I think when I was originally a freshman at CSU, I wanted to go into journalism as well. But I really liked print writing and newspaper writing, and some of the papers were going out of business in Denver right around that time. So it kind of put me at a blank slate, like, what am I interested in? What do I want to do? And I'd always been a people person, always loved going up to people, had no problem public speaking. And so when I fell into communication studies, I remember my advisor gave me a list of all of the different career paths that you could go into with it. And I remember, 5, 6 right away jumping out at me that I was interested in. I think, I chose to kind of go into HR, and that's where I've stayed. So I haven't necessarily, tested it out in different career paths. But what I can say is that I think, doing a lot of recruiting for different types of positions, a lot of the foundations of jobs that we're looking for, is this person able to work in a team, or on the flip side, can they work alone? How do they communicate with others on their team? Some of those base kind of things that we're looking for any type of position, I was able to learn in communication studies. So I think it gives a really good foundation, as I think Kaylee was saying, just in that professionalism and the professional world, that gives you some of those skills, whether it's through an internship or just through the classes that you take in communication studies. It gives you a good foundation to kind of bounce off of, kind of regardless of where you take it.
I'm not going to be able to reference the source of this, but maybe Dr. Williams, you've even seen this at some point. But I believe I've seen a graph with communication studies majors that when it comes to entry-level positions, we're a little bit slower off the start than maybe some other majors, but then we make up for that mid-career in different ways. And I think that's because sometimes communication, the base level skills that you get as a communication student are less technical than maybe if I specifically went for social work and somebody was looking for a social work student. I can do a lot of these things that a social work student could do, but my skills are more broad based in some ways. But then once I've gotten experience, that's boosted me as I've gone up in my career, because now I have these skills that I would say most every employer wants, but are harder to name in some ways. So, and I think it applies to a lot of different environments that I've been in. So I've had different jobs. I had the NPR job. I went and worked for Base Camp, which is a former after-school program in Fort Collins, and I did childcare in that setting, or after-school care. I worked for a suicide prevention nonprofit, then went back to school, and then I also worked for CSU's online programs doing marketing and communication. So I've had a lot of different experiences, and with each of them, especially working in different nonprofits and things, I would just say, what's my opportunity to do my position, but also learn what else I could learn from this position and take it into the next one. Which means that I haven't necessarily had a straight career path where, I came out of school and ding, 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 everything sort of lined up, right? But I've been able to use those skills throughout. And then in my job now, oftentimes what you would think I would be doing, I am facilitating and helping groups work together to get to their shared goals, whether that's like, say I'm working with a food coalition, right? And they're wanting to solve food and hunger issues in their community. I'm doing that, but actually something that I've done the most often since the pandemic hit is just host trainings for folks on how to engage in a virtual environment, because it's something that people aren't sure how to do when we move into a new communication setting, and how to navigate a new set of rules and things like that. So I'm helping with some of the things that I'm really saying I am, but there's almost this other like communication underlayer that's a good portion of my job as well.
I really liked what Kaylee said earlier about like how the class you took basically like helped you learn a lot about yourself. And I think that's what being in comm studies did. I learned a lot about myself because it was so broad and like how like who I wanted to be when I left college. And I think that's how I kind of figured out like, oh, I want to be in student affairs because I realized that like I knew I wanted to help people and I wanted to be able to communicate care and do those things and make a difference. Like my academic advisor made a huge difference in my life just by like taking the time to tell me to stay at CSU, right? Or to keep trying when I didn't think like I felt like I belonged at CSU, right? And so that kind of helped me figure out like who am I, where do I want to go? And it just gave me a lot of soft skills like Kaylee mentioned, like learning how, and then also Bailey, like learning how to public speak. Like I gave a lot of presentations weekly in grad school on like why to attend Western. And even now, like I do presentations on belonging, growth mindset, and what SOS is. And I do our social media, right? And all those things have to do with communication. There's like not a single job where you won't have to communicate, right? Like learning how to communicate effectively is so important. And I think that like right now you might not be able to see that, but if you have friends in different majors, as you go through college, you'll realize that like you have very different assignments and like your ability to write a paper, like a really long paper or thoughtful paper, like with research might be very different than how a science major would approach their paper, right? Like my partner was a math major. I always edit his presentations and do those things because like his understanding of like English and like how to be persuasive and those things are very different than what I've learned throughout the program. And I think that no matter where you end up and if you pivot and your life changes and stuff, like you'll always be able to think that like, okay, I had to take public speaking or like what's something that I needed along the way, right? Like this was a big jump for me to be like, okay, this isn't super student affairs and I spent my whole time in enrollment management in grad school, but I know I have a lot of basic understanding of communication and how it can help me be successful in this job. And I just really think soft skills are so important because those are the ones that are going to be transferable, right? Like Haley said that a social worker, we have very similar skills that we know how to communicate those different things. Maybe we don't have the tangible, like hard skills that they have that they've learned and got through their specific training, but like those things you can learn later on because learning doesn't end when you stop going to college. It's lifelong. Like you're always going to continue to develop these skills and get better. And I think that's just like, don't get too hard on yourself if you don't know what you want to do right now. If you feel like it's up in the air, like it just takes time, right? Like I was like sitting in my advisor's office, like, oh my gosh, like what program? And then I was like, I'm not going to a program with a GRE, right? Like you can continue to make these like decisions as you go through college and like just keep an open mind and know that like you're continuously learning and you're going to continue to develop skills even after college ends.
Thank you. Students, what questions do you all have? And if you feel more comfortable, you are more than welcome to pop those in the chat as well.
I have a quick question. How did you
Yes,
guys pick your minor or a second major?
great question, Sophie. Thank you.
I'll start. I did a double minor in environmental affairs and global environmental sustainability. And truly, that was just something that I was always interested and passionate about. So my minors, I think, have kind of helped lead my interest in some of my jobs that I've had. I'm on our wellness committee. I'm the chair for the city, so that's been something that I've tried to kind of carry along with me. It was more something that I was just interested in. So I haven't used my minors a whole lot in terms of my long-term career, but it was something that I was passionate about and really enjoyed.
So I had one minor at first and it was history. And just because like we had to take so many extra, I was just like, this is fascinating. I didn't know these things, right? Like history, what you learn in K through 12 is very different than what you will learn in college. And for me at first, right, like you might think like, how does this apply to student affairs, right? But like history reveals like the systems and what we've done wrong in the past and how we can continue to dismantle them. And I think that gave me like a good understanding when I went into student affairs of like, what was the education system based on. And there's like interesting history classes you can take. I personally took a lot of American history because I really liked Dr. Brady in the history department. I thought she was like a really cool history professor, but I also took like women in history and I took Holocaust history. And then I think my junior year, I declared sociology as my second minor because I just thought it paired well with communication. I took a race class with Dr. Eileen Connell my freshman year, and it just like changed my life. It was like an awakening in a way I can't even explain. And it just really helped me like understand who I am as a person. How do I navigate the world as a biracial person? Like just so many different things. And I just thought sociology just had such interesting classes along with communication. Like I think I took gender and communication and gender and sociology literally at the same time, and it was different. Like you wouldn't think, but it was different looking at it from communication perspective and sociology. And I just thought they're both applicable, but like Bailey said, it was also things I was just interested in. It obviously is like very applicable to education, but I just thought it was like cool. And so I was like, I want to learn more about sociology and history.
I initially started off thinking that I was going to double major in art as well. I'm not sure if these are still the requirements, but at the time that I was in school, you couldn't minor in art. You had to be a fully declared major in art to be able to do that.
I'm not
And
sure if they offer a minor yet or not. I can't answer that question.
yeah, that's a good question for an advisor, right? But because of that, so I started off as a double major. I did come in with, I did IB in high school, so I came in with credits. So then I think during one of my advising appointments, I realized that I could graduate in 2.5 years if I just did one major. So I decided to do that. So I dropped, plus art was an expensive major compared to like material costs were a lot more than book costs. So for that reason, I did opt out of that and ended up doing an English minor. And I'll admit it's probably partly because I had already taken some courses that would apply and just was able to group those in. And it just gave me a different style of writing than maybe I was doing in my communication studies classes to be able to continue building my writing skills.
I love that. I love that you all talked about kind of choosing a minor based on your passion, based on what you were finding is interesting, right? And then that career part can kind of come along, right? Or not, and that's okay. But that's one of the reasons we have a minor requirement is giving you another lens through which to view the world and perhaps build some skills at the same time. So Hannah, I think that's fascinating that you took those two gender classes concurrently, and wow, I kind of want to go do that myself. All right, what other questions do we have? Here we go. Liam has one over in the chat. Coming out of college, how would you recommend finding and getting the job that you want? It's a big one.
This is obviously like pretty fresh for me because I only graduated from grad school like a year and a half ago. I would say I just started thinking about it, I think my junior year, like where am I going to be at next summer? And so I started reading a GRE book because I was like, I'm going to go to grad school. But I had like a backup plan too if I didn't get into grad school. So I would say start talking with your advisor, like even go to the career center and start thinking about like, how are these going to be applicable? If there's someone that you're interested in their job, just like ask if you could do an informational interview. Like I did a few with different people in OTP to understand like, how did they go to grad school? What led them to the field they're in and like the specific functional area just to get a better understanding of it. And then I think like find out if in your area there's certain search things. So I work in education, so a lot of people use like higher ed jobs and as a place to look for jobs. And then you can set up like different tools and those different things. So say you really want to work at CSU and it might be in like marketing at CSU, you could go onto the CSU job website and set up like notifications that when a marketing job posts, you get the automatic notification that it's open, and then you can consider it. And that's basically what I did. I looked at it. I started like looking at my resume, tweaking it to figure out like what are my transferable skills, and then like build and just talking with other people and saying like, how did you get here? Do you have any advice for these types of interviews? Because I mean, for student success, it was harder for me because like no one in my life worked in student success. But for admissions, I like literally interviewed someone that had denied me an internship the previous summer, but they were like, I can be a resource to you. And I was like, okay. And I asked them like, how did you become like successful in your career? How did you move up? Like, how do I answer these types of interview questions? And so really utilize like a network or the people or the resources the university has to figure out like what your next step is.
Hannah pretty much just covered what I was going to say, but really focusing on your transferable skills. So whether you had an internship or you didn't, what have you done? What classes have you taken? Take a look at the job description of what you're applying to and really go through it like line by line and tie how the experience that you do have and what you have done will correlate to being successful, even if it is your first job in that field.
I can't stress enough going to the career center and things like that, because even if you're a good writer, there's going to be, it's a different style of writing, and the way that writing is assessed or evaluated is different from anything like an essay in school, right? And it can depend greatly depending on the employer. If you've got a larger organization that's processing quite a few applications, your application might be going through an automated system. That's a computer reading for certain things before a human ever looks at your application. So you're going to want to write it almost so that a machine can read it. There's other organizations that are going to be very stringent on having basically a process where bias is reduced. And so to do that, there's going to be different things that are taken or blocked off of your resume to create that sort of privacy. And people are going to go through a stringent rubric to give you points based on different elements of your job, of your resume and your cover letter. And whether or not you say something in exactly the right way could make or break you even getting to that interview round. So that's what the Career Center is for, is to help you figure out some of those rules so you're not guessing on your applications. They take too long to do to just guesswork those. The other tip that I would say is if you do internships, and this is something that was my mistake when I went through. I did probably too many internship-like experiences without getting the real benefit of them because I didn't do enough of the kind of handoffs in between when I ended an internship. What was I looking for from that person to be able to take me to that next step, right? Would I have liked a position with that organization? And I thought internship was going to be the step in the door. Was I going to want a letter of reference or things like that? It is normal that when you do an internship, people expect that you want those types of things. You're wanting experience, ask for them, right? And I didn't know that I could ask for those things or keep relationships enough that that would benefit me 2 years down the road or something like that. And then the last one that I'll say is when I was looking for jobs, this website was really helpful to me if you're Colorado specific. So compared to some of the other like online job sites out there, this one feels really concise and like the job, like sometimes if I'm on another one, maybe like Indeed or something like that, it feels like there's so many jobs that it's almost hard to figure out like what's the right fit, what's a good job. And this one just lays it out. And in particular, I don't know if they still have it, but they had a whole section on entry-level jobs when I was coming out of school. And that was helpful because those are jobs that are going to say, yeah, you may not have the most experience, and this is a good job for you to learn some of that too, which that's another mistake I think I made, was applying for jobs that I just wasn't qualified for because I was missing that sweet spot of an entry-level position. And you can go on there too and see, just to see like what are the types of things that employers are looking for and what kind of opportunities do I want to have during college that will make sure that I can have a resume that might say, yeah, I can do those things.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Kaylee had put that website in the chat, so go ahead and grab that. And I do want to point out that we do have the Career Center coming to us next week. So we'll have the Career Center counselor in class. We'll be meeting again on Zoom, but you'll get a chance to hear about all the different services, which are really, really helpful. We are at time, but I'd like to give each of our alum just a quick 15 to 30-second moment to kind of, what would be your final pearl of wisdom for our students?
I'll jump in first because something that Kaylee said, I really resonated with. I think something is, don't be too hard on yourself. Right out of college, you're not going to get the perfect high up position, and sometimes you start with the entry level a lot of times, and you really have to work your way up. So I think having good, realistic expectations, not being too hard on yourself, and knowing that it does take a while, and it does take hard work, but you can do it.
I think I would just say get involved sooner than later. I think it's easy to get to your junior year and realize things that you could have been involved in, or suddenly discover something and wish you had been involved in it for the past 2 years. I know that's especially hard right now because it feels like everything is really disconnected and whatnot. But I think that a moment like this also gives us a cue for what employers are going to be looking for in the years ahead, which are people who are adaptable, flexible, and resilient in work environments, as plenty of places are just suddenly switching to remote work. And how can you stand out in a quickly changing environment as well?
My high school counselor told me this, and I have lived by this, but she told me that life is an opportunity train. You can either watch it or get on it. And so don't spend your however many years you decide to spend at CSU watching every opportunity go by and you don't get on the train. Like you pay a lot of money to be there, and there's so many opportunities you can utilize that are free, or you could get an on-campus job like that will help like just form your identity and who you want to be after college. And I think make the most of your experience while you can, and just don't be afraid to ask questions. It can be very intimidating, but if you can find one person like a professional staff on campus, they can help connect you just like my advisor did. Or if you meet an alumni or one of us that you're like, wow, I really liked hearing you talk today, like go ahead and ask for the information just so you can learn more, because those people can usually be very pivotal into your like career at CSU and after, just by being a resource to you.
Wonderful. Well, I cannot thank you all enough for the time that you have spent with us and the insights that you've given to our students. I really appreciate it. So thank you. And I hope our paths cross soon. Students, know that these three are now part of your network, right? And I'm sure any of them would gladly answer questions that maybe you didn't feel comfortable asking in front of the class, or you might have been like, oh wow, that job sounds really cool. I hope that I can get something like that sometime. Connect with them. And that's actually one of our assignments coming up is to find people either on campus or alumni to connect with. So here are three wonderful ones that you can reach out to. So thank you all. I hope you have a great day. I hope that you have a great rest of the year, and stay safe and stay healthy.